Starting with the lips and then moving on to the rings around the eyes, eyebrows, and rim of the mask, I'm just going to use some black paint that I got at a craft store a couple years ago and paint in the details. I outlined the eyes, rim of the mask, and mouth with tape, but didn't bother doing the eyebrows the same way, so later in the video clip, you'll see me struggling to get the eyebrows looking even somewhat even. The lips were honestly the easiest part of painting this entire mask because I taped them very, very carefully. The hardest part would have to be the eyebrows, but the eye sockets weren't exactly easy either. The actual rim of the mask wasn't too hard, but because this is just a $5 craft store mask, the ends of the rim curled up at some points and I had to be sure I got in that crevice or I would have to cut it all off, and I did not trust myself to cut this plastic mask to pieces. Luckily, the eye sockets didn't give me too much trouble either. It was just a little bit of touching up that I had to do at the end and trying my very best not to completely color, or paint that is, in the cracks of the tape because I didn't tape the eyes nearly as carefully as I taped the lips and there were little cracks all over. Unfortunately, I didn't actually think to record this part, but while I was peeling the tape away from the rings around the eyes, I noticed that the ends of the lines looked almost unpolished. They were really janky and chipped, and they just looked really messy, but I actually decided to keep them that way instead of taking more time to line the eyes even more carefully with a smaller brush. Not because I'm lazy, but because this way it looked more like Tim had decorated it himself, or like it had gotten scuffed up while he was in the woods doing God knows what, which is kind of the effect I was going for. You'll see later in the video when I'm trying to clip the wig that I keep all the messy spikes that it came with. It came with a lot of messy spikes in the back. And I keep them all in because this isn't Tim pre-operator. This is post being stalked by this thing for who knows how long, and honestly I just kind of wanted the cosplay to look like he'd been wandering around in the woods for a while, so the imperfections in the mask and the messiness of the wig were actually working to my advantage this time. The only part of my costume that I'd say does look very polished is the jacket, because A, it's a nice jacket, and it's not super cheap, so it's not like there are any threads coming loose. Well, yet. And B, I really don't have the heart to cover it in fake blood or dirt or something to make it look all scuffy. I figure this would be one of those things that he could easily just take off and dump into a stream for a little bit to clean it, so it probably wouldn't be that messy. Especially since it's already that tannish shade of brown, so even if it was a little bit messy, it wouldn't be as obvious as it would on, say, Jeff the Killer's hoodie. You'll see later on in the video, towards the end, where I put all the outfit shots, that I'm wearing ripped jeans for the cosplay, and although I do have normal, darker, non-ripped jeans that I could use, it's really just going to come down to how I'm feeling on Halloween. And I figured the ripped jeans fit pretty well for this version of the character. Messy, wandering around in the woods for ages, not super polished, ripped up jeans. I think it fits. While I was working on this mask, the eyebrows were definitely the part that was giving me the most trouble. Every time I messed up one little thing on them and I'd try to correct it, I'd end up making the eyebrow way thicker than I wanted it to, or smudging the wet paint. And instead of just waiting for it to partially dry, scraping it off and going back, I kept trying to fix it while it was still wet. Eventually though, I was able to get it even. And now onto the wig. What I'm doing here is just making sure the back spikes stick out like they're supposed to, or, well, like they did in the picture. In the original listing for this wig on the shop I bought it from, it was very, very spiky and I really liked that look, so I figured if I was going to do the walking around in the woods for 2 weeks, already a proxy Tim like I wanted to, the back should probably spike up the way it did in the picture, which is kind of half the reason I got this particular wig. And now I'm just trying to swoop the bangs to one side and hold them in place using some bobby pins. The bangs, because of the way the wig was parted, really did not want to stay to the side, so I ended up having to pin them until I was able to get enough hairspray in them that they'll just stay like that, for the most part, on their own. They don't hang exactly as far as I want them to, but the wig head I was using is considerably smaller and thinner than my actual head, so when I put it on, it doesn't really matter that they're not as swooped as I wanted them to be because it still looks right. By the way, every time I turn around or pause, I'm trying to either look at a reference picture and be sure I'm doing it right, or remember how the reference picture looks so I don't have to keep turning around. I had been looking at this picture for so long that I got embarrassed, so I wanted you all to be sure that I was still functioning and I wasn't just messing around at this point. I'm trying to get a better reference picture, something from the back of the head, so I could either make it closer to how it's supposed to be, or just say, forget that, and make it spiky like I wanted it to. When the wig arrived, part of the side was way flatter to the head than the other side was, so at first I was a bit concerned about that, but then I realized that's the side that's supposed to look thinner anyway, so for once, the crushing of an Amazon package actually worked to my favor. I was originally going to try to use this rubber band to tie the fringe into a ponytail so I could cut it into a pointier shape, but that really only worked half as well as I wanted it to, so I ended up bailing, and the wig looks a lot more feminine now than I thought it would. I don't really mind it though, something about it just works. Overall, I was pretty happy with how the costume came out. It's definitely not perfect, but for the time I made it in, I'm pretty proud of it.